take into consideration that you're going to have, limited yards and things like that. So normally our services, some manufacturers recommend that the applications be done every 2 months at full rate. We actually recommend, with the high temperatures in the summer and the burn off that could happen and the rain that we could have, we actually recommend monthly treatments in our zone, and we break that treatment in half. So we do a lesser rate, but we do it more often to make sure we get control in place. And we do that service starting about $60 to $65 a month.
Okay. Thank you.
Now,
very helpful. Any comments on kind of, usually I start with the demand side. Who's the consumer? What are their pain points? You mentioned earlier the health insurance policy at the beginning, so I think I get a feel for kind of the why, but obviously you can add color. But anything, and again, mosquito in particular, but maybe pest control, is there a X dollar disposable income? Any comments on demographics, millennials versus boomers versus other? Just kind of comments on the customer side for these services, please.
Got it. So we do a lot of different groups. We do probably the biggest ones that we're seeing now are the millennials, the younger ones with kids. The demographics probably for us in our area is probably $60,000 and above. Mm-hmm. And they're young families. In some cases, don't want to mess with it. They want us to take care of everything. And we say everything they want us. They buy their house. They want us to do it. I didn't mention earlier, but we do landscaping, lawn maintenance, all that stuff, all part of our service too. So they want to do as least amount as possible to their homes, and they want one company that they can deal with if possible. So we deal a lot with that. We still have a baby boomer group out there that they're more, the cancellations are more higher with that demographic than with the millennials because they're less forgiving and they're more concerned about their income. So if they see a couple of mosquitoes, they chop it up to, it's not working, I gave it a try, I tried it for a couple of months, I'm going to cancel it, kind of a thing. So that's what we found, is that our cancellation rate is higher on the baby boomers and the older group because they're home every day, they're watching everything, and if they see a mosquito, it's not working.
Got it. Thank you. Kind of maybe a silly derivative question for this space, but whenever I think about the demand side and consumers and purchasing, I think about alternatives, not just competitors, right? And I know it's silly, but I guess I could go to Home Depot or somewhere and get one of those shooters or Raid, which I know is absolutely not the same thing as the service you provide. But what's the kind of the reality in the market, kind of how consumers perceive the viability of alternatives to paying, reasonable dollars, right, for mosquito control services from a company like yourself? Do you see people try to self-perform? Is there any viability in that? Any comments there?
We do. So same thing. The baby boomers and the older crowd, they are more likely to go do that. They're not as concerned about, and they haven't heard all the horror stories about chemicals and, things like that. So they're probably the ones that are going to try it first. And we normally will pick them up after they feel like they're not getting the results that they were looking for, or they've made a misapplication, or they've gotten in an argument with the neighbors or whatever. But somehow or another, they just got to the point where I'm done with it, done trying to do it on my own. Let somebody else come take a look at it and do it. So we're picking those up that way. We actually teamed up with a big. It wasn't Home Depot or Lowe's, but it was a bigger regional player for us. Kind of home kind of a place where you could buy lumber and stuff like that. We teamed up with them and actually set up booths and stuff like that to educate the customers and kind of help them with what to buy and stuff, and trying to see if that would leverage and bring it over. We don't see that there's a lot of customers that are still going to do it. If they do it themselves, they're going to do it themselves for pest control and everything else. If they're in our market space and they're looking for somebody to do pest control, then we look at it, they're not going to do their mosquitoes. We have their mosquitoes then. If somebody's going to do it, it'll be us.
Got it. Thank you. And I'm going to go back to a couple of things from earlier. And I know we said 45 minutes. I'm going to try to keep that for both of us, if not quicker. I'm really stacked on these calls today. We touched on this earlier, but I just want to circle back. And I'll go back to the notes. There'll be a transcript. But barriers to entry for I believe you mentioned Obviously I'm aware of Terminix, Orkin, players like that. And again, this may be a repeat, but just to make sure I nail it, what would the barriers to entry be for kind of a broader, if at all, how would you characterize them for kind of the broader pest control to really dive into the mosquito and frankly impact the business of companies like you mentioned, Mosquito Nix, Mosquito Joe, and the other ones that we can find?
So how would somebody coming into the market, how would they do?
Well, I guess what's the risk? So let's say I'm Mosquito, Nix, or Joe, or Authority, or Squad, or Shield, or Buzz, or there's so many of these guys, right? How worried should I be that a company like yourself, which again in your market you're doing it, but big picture kind of future market potential situation question that a Terminix or someone like that would just come in and just take over, such that all these mosquito specific kind of point solution mosquito players, whether they're franchise model or not, are displaced or somehow significantly impacted.
Yeah, I don't see that happen. It's kind of the same world that we lived in our pest control. There's 4 or 5 players that are in the pest control companies that are major international players or national providers, and they have presence in all of our markets. But still, there's a tremendous amount of customers out there that want to deal with somebody who they view as local. So the advantage that they have to those mosquito franchises is typically the ones that we've talked to, and there's been several of them that had shown interest. We do acquisitions every year, so there's been several of those companies that have approached us about buying their company out because they wanted to do it. They were their only problem that they have is that they're not getting the leads that specific company that they bought the franchise for promised them, and they're landlocked into certain smaller areas. I don't think it's a situation where the big companies are going to hurt them. I think there's enough customers that are out there. I think it's going to be who's going to do the best job marketing and going door to door, talking to these customers, because people typically in our market, these summer sales programs for pest control have proven that if it's whoever comes and knocks on the door, it's whoever comes and markets and I see it a certain way, and that's when I make that decision to call. I don't think I'm buying from a national provider. I'm buying for somebody who I feel like has that technical expertise.
So let me play, thank you, this is again very helpful. So kind of thinking about the market, I'm going to play back 2 terms that I had in my head that I think may relate to what you said. Just ask you to kind of confirm that I'm getting it right or calibrate me if not. One is it feels like there's headroom in this market, just from a market growth standpoint. I don't know what inning we're in or what the future growth is, but it's your point. It feels like there's certainly an opportunity for mosquito control to grow quite rapidly. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Yep.
And also to the knocking on doors and things, it almost like to me the word land grab comes to mind, right? If I were one of these players, it might be just it's like speed, right? Like I got to knock on more doors sooner because if I wait till next season or the wrong time of year, somebody else has already knocked on the door. I'm kind of out of luck, right? Is that reasonably accurate?
That's exactly right. Yep.
Do you have a feel for market size, market growth? Again, at the mosquito level, the pest stuff's pretty easy to research, but the mosquito seems a little more opaque and or variable. Do you have a feel for last X year's market growth, next X year's market growth, market size in terms of dollars or any metric?
Yeah, I think for us this year we've got a 20% growth on it from the previous year. We didn't know when we first jumped into it what it was going to look like or what we were going to have. So when we hit that $1 million after the first year, we saw it as a viable option for us to continue to grow. Now, we still didn't market anything. We still didn't put any advertisements or any literature out there for anybody. We just sold it over the phone if they called in, and we've seen 15 to 20% increases in that. Now, we don't know. Our concern is when's it going to stop or slow down kind of a deal, and that's kind of what we're looking at. We don't see. I think I'm involved in the Vector committee that works with the National Environmental Health, and we report back to the CDC. So the information that we're getting this year is, Zika is still a big concern. We've got some